But you have to wake up. Good, good morning. Oh, good. Yeah, it's still morning. Good morning, Ebony. How are you today? We have you on mute, I believe.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you now.
Good.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us.
No problem. Thank you for inviting me. I think I have a echo. Hold on, let me take off this speaker. Okay.
Okay, we also have Erica, the Vice President of the Chamber on, and Mark Santana.
Hi, Erica. Hi, Mark.
We may have a couple people joining us, but we are live on Facebook.
Okay.
And the video is recorded.
All right,
so we're going to get started. It's 12:01. Hey, Dexter, how are you, sir?
I'm well. How are you?
Hi.
Good. So I'm Cornell Darden Jr., President and CEO of the Southland Black Chamber of Commerce. And today we have a special guest, Miss Ebony Gist of ARCpoint Labs. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the services that they offer and the antibody testing for the COVID-19.
Yeah.
Dexter, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, Dexter Harris, president and founder of DKX Flooring. We do carpet detailing. We do carpet cleaning and we do carpet detailing. So Black-owned business. Also pastor out in Gary, Indiana.
Awesome. Well, definitely welcome to the call, Dexter. Mark, would you like to introduce yourself, sir?
Yes, I am Mark Santana. I am a podcast host for the Tall Man Conservative Show on Spotify every Saturday and Sundays from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock p.m.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, Mark. And Erica, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is Erica. Gotta turn the light down. Sorry about that. We're in the same room. My name is Erica. I'm with the Southland Black Chamber of Commerce and Industry. I serve as the vice president, and I'm excited to learn more about what ARCpoint Labs does, and especially about this COVID-19 antibody testing and what it means, because there's a lot of strange information out there that doesn't make a lot of sense. So I'm excited to find out.
Thanks, Erica.
Thank you, Erica. Looks like we just had another participant join the Zoom call directly. Senator Patrick Joyce. Looks like he may still be connecting his audio, though. Came in and came out. We'll let Senator Joyce introduce himself. Oh, he's gone. He must have a bad connection. So we'll let him introduce himself later, but nice to have the senator on the line. But Miss Ebony Gist, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So thank you for doing this, because I think it's a really good idea. And I was excited when the invite came through because for a couple different reasons. One is because there is so much information, right, out about COVID-19. And sometimes when it's so much information, it's hard to cipher through what's important, what's not important, what you should be listening to, what you shouldn't be listening to, and just trying to make sense of everything and determine what your actions should be. So I think the more that we can get into these smaller groups and kind of talk about the concerns that we're having and the questions that we have with regards to the testing, the better off that we are. So I am Ebony Gist. I am the owner, co-owner, so I own it along with my husband, of ARCpoint Labs in Orland Park. We are a toxicology and clinical testing facility. And so that means we do everything from drug and alcohol testing to DNA, STD, all sorts of clinical testing. So we do array of testing. So anything pretty much that your doctor orders you to have in terms of lab work, we can pretty much do, as well as anything that you need in terms of onboarding employees, like drug, alcohol, background, things like that. We can do that as well. So that's what we do every day, right? That's our business. But in light of COVID, we have been pulled to be a resource as well for COVID-19 testing. And so what we started doing initially was just antibody testing. And that's kind of where we kind of made our forefront as one of the first to market to be able to provide antibody testing as an option for the community. Now, so with antibody testing, and I thought about when you first talked to me about having this particular Zoom meeting, I thought about how I really wanted to do this, because I've done like tons and tons of Zoom meetings, right? Just throughout my career. And a lot of times you put together some slides, you put it up on the screen, and then you start to talk at people while they're watching these slides. And so what I thought is that, like, in my experience, most people focus on the content of the slides and not really the conversation or the context of the conversation. And I thought that if I had an opportunity to get a small group of people together to talk about some of the questions and challenges we have with regards to COVID, I didn't want people focused on what was on the slides, but really engaged in the context of the conversation. So I thought I would just kind of wing it, right? Just have the conversation about this stuff. So I want to start first with talking about antibody testing. Antibody testing is a test that looks for past infection, right? And the first set of confusion that's out there with antibody testing is that people say that antibody testing is for exposure, right? Oh, it looks to test if you were exposed to COVID. If we think about this like practically, like just using common sense in general terms, exposure is so vague that anytime you go to the grocery store, technically you're probably exposed, right? Or if you go to your mailbox, you're exposed. Antibody testing is not going to tell you that. Antibody testing is going to tell you if two things happened. One, you were infected with the virus. And two, your body built antibodies in response to fighting the virus. Both of those things have to be true for you to get a positive reading on an antibody test. If neither of those things happen, you would have a negative reading on an antibody test. But here's where all the confusion comes in, right? Because an antibody test, again, is only looking for past infection, right? So if you had have been infected with the virus and built antibodies, right, you would have a positive result. But it's only a snapshot in time of what is true today, right? Because we don't know how long these antibodies last in your body, right? We've seen some people who come back for repeat testing that still have antibodies a month later, 3 months later, right? But we've seen people who come back and they don't, right? So it's only a snapshot in time. So it's only a snapshot in time. It's only telling you about past exposure. So why the heck do you want to do an antibody test? Like, what is the point in spending your money to come and have an antibody test, right? Like, what's the point? Only two reasons, right? One, you just want to know. We have people who just want to know. We have physicians who just want to rule out other things. So they want to say, okay, let's do an antibody test. Let's see if that was the cause of this particular condition that you were experiencing, or should we go down a path of something else? So you want to know. Two, you want to help. That's it. And by help, I mean research, right? We have partnered with Illinois Department of Public Health, where we collect samples for people who are willing donors, and we provide those samples to them for further research. And this research goes towards eventually developing a vaccine, et cetera, trying to make our tests more specific to the virus, things like that. So those are the two reasons why you would want to have an antibody. Those are the two reasons why we see people that come into our lab wanting to have an antibody test. They just want to know, or they just want to help. Those are the only two reasons.
I have a question, Ebony.
Yeah.
So antibodies, is it implied that if you have the antibody, that it's possible that you may be immune to catching it or passing it on to someone else?
Yeah. So if we think about antibodies in terms of the fact that it's still just a snapshot in time, right? So if you were to take an antibody test today and your antibody test came back positive for, let's say, IgG only, right? So that would suggest that you have some level of functional immunity, because IgG is the antibody that hangs around in your body and it's prepared to fight should you become infected with the virus again, right? Now, the problem with that is that we don't know how long that lasts. So your immunity may be today, it may not be good tomorrow, right? Or the next day, because we don't know how long that's lasts. There's still ongoing research trying to understand that. In more steady disease states, you do keep these antibodies for several years. But again, for COVID-19, we don't know. So, yeah.
I have another question.
Yeah.
So when it comes to contact tracing, do your test for the antibody testing for COVID-19, does it has anything to do with contract tracing?
Yeah. So antibody testing is different than the PCR testing. The PCR testing is the testing that's used for contact tracing, right? So when we were just talking about antibody testing, that's past infection, right? That doesn't tell you what's going on today, right? If we move toward PCR testing, so that's the test where everybody kind of pretty much know now they go in either your nasal cavity, right, or your throat, right? And that's where we collect the sample. That test is to determine whether or not you have a live active infection. So that virus is currently shedding, right? And we're able to take that sample, test it, and determine if it's positive or negative, the presence of the virus is there or not. Now, the way that works with contract tracing is that we turn that information, we are obligated to turn that information over to the state. We're obligated to report that information. They take that information and they contact the individual who may have tested positive, and then they ask a series of questions that allows them to find out who this person may have exposed to the virus by being in contact with them for a certain period of time. So that's how contract tracing works. Now,
So
go ahead.
Now I was just going to ask, so with the antibody testing for the COVID-19, is that test a private test, or are those results shared with anyone? So if I come in, Kathleena Darden, is my information going to be sent off to the state, and are they aware that I've conducted that as myself?
Right. So for antibody testing, it's completely your choice, right? When you come in to have an antibody test, we have consent and disclosure forms that you can fill out, and you determine whether or not you want to share that information with the state. But again, remember, I told you people come in for two reasons to get antibody tests. They either want to know themselves or they want to help. And in the case that they want to help, they want to share that information because they're like, can I donate plasma? Can I help toward research? Can I do this? So in those cases, those are the people that would say, yes, share my information. But antibody testing is not mandated reporting. We do not have to report that information. However, most of the people, I will tell you, a great fraction of the people that come in from us want us to share the information.
I think Eric had a question.
Well, you already answered it for me, but I was wondering, as far as what you've seen, and as far as how long the antibodies are lasting in people's bodies, have you seen personally that somebody came in and was positive for COVID-19 in the past, but now has no antibodies?
Yes, we have seen it. We have seen people who have tested positive on a PCR test that have quarantined, their symptoms resolved, etc., and they've come back to see if they've had antibodies, and they have not had them. These people are typically referred to as like non-responders, right? We do know that there's a very small percentage of the population, but still a percentage of the population that are non-responders. They just don't, their body just doesn't develop those antibodies in response to that. And so it is disease specific from my understanding. It's not like a genetic sort of thing. So there is that possibility as well, that you just don't develop the antibodies, which is why the conversation around herd immunity is so important, right? Because it's like a lot of people I see, that come in and they have conversations with us and they're just like, well, won't they just let everybody just go outside and just interact with everybody so we can just get herd immunity? Well, if you understand that everybody who comes in contact with this virus does not develop the antibodies, or may not develop the antibodies, or may not develop them for an extensive period of time, how do you achieve herd immunity then, right?
Thank you. I had one other question.
Yeah.
I've heard that the antibody test is not 100% accurate, and people are getting false positives because they've been infected with a different strain of coronavirus. In the past, they say a lot of times the common cold can be the coronavirus. Other little illnesses that we've caught, during our whole lives could have had us develop antibodies.
Yep.
So A, how much do we have to think about that, and how much does that affect the test? And B, does having the antibody of a different coronavirus help to protect you in fighting this current coronavirus that everybody is so scared of?
Awesome questions. So first, it is specific to the particular test that you're taking. So it is important to, when you're deciding on whether or not you want to have an antibody test, it is first and foremost important to understand what the sensitivity and specificity of the test that you're taking is, because that will tell you how accurate overall your test will be in determining whether or not you have developed antibodies, one, enough antibodies to be detected, and then two, antibodies specific for COVID-19. So that is what sensitivity and specificity together is going to tell you. So you want to find a test that's high in both of those areas. For example, our particular antibody test, our lab-based option is 99.9%, right? And we use the Euroimmune test. And so that's for IgG. And that is the antibody that is the longer lasting antibody in your body that hangs around. And so that test would be specific for COVID-19 in most cases. However, what I like to tell people to keep in mind is that I know when we start talking about COVID-19 and anything that causes this much fear and concern in people, is that sometimes our ability to think just clearly goes out the window, right? Just think about the flu, for example, right? There's tons of people who get the flu vaccine, right? Tons of people who get the flu. And still, right, there is a possibility that you still catch the flu that season, even if you have the flu shot, right? Just no different than a pregnancy, birth control, right? There's people who take birth control and they take it according as prescribed, and there's still that possibility that you become pregnant, right? So this is not 100%. But guys, if we think about this, nothing is, right? And anybody who tells you that there's something that's 100% is probably lying. There is nothing that's 100%. So there is that possibility, like you mentioned, Erica, that it could be some exposure to a previous coronavirus or something that lives in that family of coronaviruses. But what the manufacturers do is they run tests, validation tests, etc., so that they can make sure or try to prove as much as possible within the scope of their testing that this particular test is looking for that particular strand of COVID-19. And once they have that information, they publish that in terms of sensitivity and specificity. And so that's the gist of that. That's how you determine whether or not you're getting a test that could or has a chance of giving you that false positive. Now, the second part of your question was with regards to, let's see, the second part of your question, remind me.
Well, just like you were saying about the flu vaccine, just because you get vaccinated doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to catch the flu that year. You still might catch it. But they also tell you that if you have the flu vaccine and you still catch the flu, it's much more likely that you're going to have more mild symptoms and you'll get over it more quickly because you have the antibodies. So even if you've got the antibodies to a coronavirus, but it might not be particular to the COVID-19 that's going out right now, can you expect that those people who carry those antibodies might recover more quickly or have less severe symptoms?
I have not personally read any studies that support or refute those claims either way. Practically, just thinking from a scientific perspective, sounds like it could possibly be, but I can't provide anything that supports that one, to some degree or some extent that I have read personally. But it's certainly a possibility.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Awesome. I have another question.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the testing, I know I saw some graphics about how the COVID-19 testing is with sticking that thing up your nose. And I don't
Yeah.
want to go through that. I'm like a little kid when it comes to that. So what's the process for the antibody testing?
Yeah. So one thing I'll say though, in response to the nasal swab, is that we also do an oral, right? And it's the same sort of methodology in terms of how we test the sample once we get it back to the lab, but the collection method is different. So we do go through the throat. It tends to be a lot less invasive for people, and people tend to be a little more comfortable with that method of collection. So we do have that option as well. So don't let that deter you from being tested. But for antibody testing, it's blood. That's what we use to do that test. So it is a small blood draw, and that is how we determine whether or not you have the antibody. So it's not a nasal or a throat collection. It's just blood.
When you say blood draw, do you mean like a finger stick, or do you mean like an actual blood draw, like when you're gonna go to the doctor and get all your fancy tests done?
Yep. So both. So before, when we first rolled this out, we did have authorization under emergency use to do the finger stick as a collection method. However, as we got more information and learned more, we transitioned over to still doing a blood draw for that rapid test instead of a finger stick as well. So it is an actual blood draw that is done. Yeah. It's just the amount of blood taken is a little different when you're doing the rapid antibody test versus a full lab draw.
And how long does that rapid test take to come back?
15 minutes. So in 15 minutes, you will know whether or not you have become infected and built the antibodies in response to that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, 15 minutes.
Did you have a question, Mark?
I had a question for Miss Albany.
Hi.
I've never had a flu vaccine when I was a little kid, so should I be getting the antibody testing for this coronavirus, or to see if I've been infected?
So having or not having the flu vaccine wouldn't really bearing on whether or not you should have an antibody test or not with regards to COVID, right? Because they're different, very different. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that an antibody test, again, is the motivation that people have for wanting to get that test is two things. They either want to help or they want to know. So if you feel like you may have been infected with this virus in the past and you just really want to know, was that COVID, was it something else, then an antibody test may be a good option for you. But if you don't want to help and you don't want to know, then the antibody test really provides no benefit for you.
Did that answer your question, Mark? I think you might be good.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Sounds good.
All right. Does anyone else have any questions for Ebony?
I do. I have a lot of questions.
That's okay.
I like numbers and facts, so it helps me wrap my head around everything. Well, first of all, do you guys also do COVID-19 testing to see if you've got an active infection?
We do.
And what's the process like for that? Because I understand it's kind of scary when you've got somebody who thinks they've got it coming into the office.
Yeah, it is really scary. So the thing with ARCpoint in Orland Park is that we only test asymptomatic individuals, right? So for any of our COVID testing, we do not test people who are actively experiencing symptoms. And I know you're probably saying, okay, well, then what's the point? If I don't have symptoms, why do I need any of these tests, right? Well, the point is, one, for the antibody test, it's best that you're asymptomatic or without symptoms because it does not impact the results of the test, right? It can't compromise it if you're actively having symptoms because remember, this test is looking for your body's response to fighting the infection. So that happens after, right? That's going on after. So that's the first thing. That's why we do individuals who do not have symptoms. For our PCR test, you guys may already know that in the state of Illinois, in order for you to have any elective surgeries, you need to have a negative test, a negative PCR test, negative viral test, to be able to go through with that surgery, as well as the physicians, the surgeons who are doing your procedure need to have it as well as if you're returning to work, right, after a positive. So let's say you had a positive test somewhere else and you need to go back to work and you need to show proof to your employer, you're not currently having symptoms anymore, you're fine, you're ready to go. Those individuals need a place to be tested. And so we do those tests as well. And then it's also important to point out that we know 40% of individuals are asymptomatic, right? They are not experiencing symptoms, right? Before and still able to spread this virus. And then 35% of people are completely asymptomatic the entire time. And so because we know that there is this population of people that are asymptomatic, we do exclude our testing to just those individuals. And the process is simple. We take all the precautions as advised by the CDC with regards to testing. We do it by appointment only. It's in 15-minute increments. Individuals pull up in front of our lab. They stay inside their vehicles. We come out, a technician comes out, announces their appointment time, and then bring the individual back for testing. The collection is done with all the proper PPE. Our facility, every staff member is there wearing masks to protect themselves as well. They come in, they get their collection, they're back out the door. That allows our technician time to clean up and sanitize appropriately between each person. And that gives the minimal time in and out of our facility, just in case they are one of those 40% of people who are positive and asymptomatic. So that's how we minimize that risk of transmission.
Thank you. Forgive me if I'm go ahead.
No, I was just going to say we have a question from Facebook. Let me pull that question up. Can you still hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Oh yeah, they said, are there still shortages with the rapid test availability?
If they mean rapid tests in terms of PCR testing, like do you have the infection or not? Do you have the virus or not? I have heard, just like many of you may have in the news, that there are still some shortages, at least with testing, but there are so many sites that are opening up. So it's all about being able to access the resources. They do have websites where you can go if you're looking for a free test option. If you have a physician's referral, we have availability for testing. We have not personally experienced any shortage of testing in terms of PCR testing at our facilities. So there are options available out there for individuals who need to be tested.
And just for some of the people who just joined on Facebook Live or just joined the Zoom call, I'm Cornell Darden Jr., President and CEO of the Southland Black Chamber of Commerce. And we're here with Chamber member and special guest, Ebony Gist. Oh, Ebony, is it Gist or Gist?
Yes.
Ebony Gist of ARCpoint Labs in Orland Park. Right now, we're talking about one of their services that they provide, which is antibody testing for COVID-19. We are welcome to questions right now. I did see we had a few more people join the Zoom. Kiara, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Kiara, membership coordinator of the Southland Black Chamber of Commerce. Sorry, I'm late. I just joined the Zoom, but I'm listening to everything, and everything is very interesting. Someone just she just answered a question that I was going to ask. So.
Awesome. How about Hasina? Would you like to introduce yourself, Hasina? You may have to.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. Am I still on mute? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I'm Hasina. I'm actually with the Homewood Chamber. I'm the vice president, and I was just listening to, because my husband actually had the virus. He was hospitalized for about a week and a half, and I'm just curious about that antibody testing and just, what is the purpose of it and the need. So I appreciate this information today.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Welcome, Hasina.
Yes.
And Senator Patrick Joyce, would you like to introduce yourself, sir?
Sure would, Cornell. I appreciate you doing this. Great information, Ebony. I've just been listening in. You've been asking great questions because you've already covered everything I was going to ask. Good meeting all of you.
Thanks for joining the call, Senator. And I believe Kathleena Darden, would you like to introduce yourself, ma'am? You may be on mute, Kathy. Okay, we'll come back to Kathy, but Ebony, great information so far. you're so well informed, as you should be as a professional. So we really appreciate that. Would you like to give us some background on you and your company?
Yeah, sure. So, my background is in pharmaceuticals, right? And that sounds a bit interesting, but I've spent my entire career in what is called pharmacovigilance. So that is the study of the safety, really safety of products, really spanning across the drug development process all the way to market, and then monitoring how people respond in the population to these drugs. So adverse events and reactions to the drugs that are on market. And so you can probably already see the correlation between what I've done my whole life versus, you know, the business that I'm in today, which with regards to our clinical platform and services. And so what ARCpoint allows me to do now is to have that patient facing, or that customer facing, the people facing is what I like to call it, aspect, versus the corporate clinical life that I've come from for the last number of years, right? And in my stint in the pharmaceutical industry, it has really, really allowed me to see a lot of variation that I think me now coming from that environment, now coming down to our communities and being able to interact with our people on a day-to-day basis allows me to start transforming some of the things that I believe hinder us in our African-American community with regards to healthcare and proactive healthcare. And that really ties into the whole conversation with COVID as well, because coming from the pharma industry, right, I understand high level, right, from soup to nuts, right, how drugs get to market, how vaccines get to market, right? When you go to the doctor, they write you a script, you go get your prescription, right, and you just take your medicine as prescribed, right? But we rarely stop to think about the process, right, that occurred in order for you to have access to that medication, in order for you to have that vaccine, right? And what I know to still be an alarming truth with regards to the manufacturing of medications and vaccines, et cetera, is that our African American community is still not represented in the terms of clinical trials at a high enough rate to ensure that these medications are appropriately, right, or to understand what may occur when we take them, because we do know that genetically there are a difference between people, even people that are in the same ethnic group, right? Even people that are in different ones, right? And when you have conditions like high blood pressure, certain cancers, right? Diabetes, sickle cell, and now COVID-19 that we know impact African Americans at higher rates, right? We know that there are other factors that contribute to that. However, if you're talking about developing medications, vaccines to cure, to treat, to prevent these sorts of things, if African Americans are not represented in the clinical trials, the manufacturing of these things, how do we know what the impact will be? How do we anticipate or try to proactively minimize the risk of certain adverse reactions to these vaccines and drugs that will occur in the African American community? Because let's be honest, the majority of people who are going to eventually need to use this product once it's on market are African Americans. Why? Because we suffer from the conditions at a more alarming rate than our counterparts. So one of my true passions in being able to come from corporate now down into the communities is to really start to break down fear and build trust within our communities, such that we can be more open, more responsive, more informed with regards to our participation and inclusion in the trials that bring drugs and vaccines to market that are targeted specifically to African American communities.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Does anyone else have any more questions in regards to the antibody testing?
I do.
Shoot. Oh, look, Mark, did you have a question, Mark?
Nope.
Okay.
What was I going to ask? Okay, yeah. Forgive me if I'm getting a little too deep into this whole thing because I know you provide the testing and everything.
Oh, you're
But
fine.
as far as the research goes, you see research coming out that's stating that that men are more likely to have a more serious infection than women, and you're seeing that certain blood types may play a factor in your infection and how likely you are to get infected or to get seriously ill. Are you seeing that? Is that something that we can trust and rely on?
Yeah. So I am not, so the pieces of data that we capture when we're doing the testing does not allow me to make those correlations. So I can't make statements to support or deny those things because we don't capture that data. For example, like blood type, we don't record that. So that's something that I cannot use in terms of our analysis to make that sort of correlation. But I do understand that there are institutions, very credible institutions out there that have access to that type of data to make those sort of correlations. And I have read some of the studies that you're referring to, and it appears to be relevant, I'll say. But again, I'm cautious to support or deny anything that I can't see the data that supports it. And so it may very well be true, may not. But I really can't say because we don't collect that in our lab. We don't collect blood type, etc.
Okay, thank you. Because I was just wondering. My blood type is O, and I've heard that people with
So
blood type
that's right.
O. So I'm not about to go outside and like lick a shopping cart or anything, but I feel like, oh, I forgot my mask in the car. I'll be okay.
But you know what? I think your question kind of leads me to another important fact that I think I wanted to address in this call is that, you see a lot of questions and people that say, why should I be doing this? Why should I care? If I'm not sick, right? If I'm not, nothing, I'm healthy, even if I got this, I'll be fine, right? I'll just be sick for a couple days and then all is well, all is good, and there's a lot of people who feel that way. And my response to everyone that I've come in contact with that had these sorts of opinions is this. I think this virus has a strong correlation to the whole African American Black Lives Matter movement. Don't kill me. Let me explain. The reason why I say that is because that movement is really trying to push a message that you should care about what happens to not just you, but the person next to you, the man next to you, right? Our injustices are your injustices, right? That's exactly what COVID is showing us as well, right? It's saying you have to make decisions and you have to be proactive about certain behaviors that not just because it's okay for you or it may benefit you, but it benefits your grandmother, your aunt, your sick cousin, or your neighbor's grandmother or your neighbor's sick cousin. So all of this stuff is really telling us to think about somebody other than yourself. So when I talk to people that say, oh, well, why am I concerned about something that does not bother, everybody, or why am I concerned about something that's not going to bother me? I'll just be sick and that's okay. We're concerned because although you may recover just fine, and although lots of people recover just fine, there is a growing percentage of people who don't, right? Who don't. And that is just as important as the people who do.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Ebony, would you like to share some of the other testing that you guys do at ARCpoint Labs?
Absolutely. So we also do DNA testing. Is really a popular test that we offer in our lab. Everything is by appointment only right now, obviously, just because we need to ensure social distancing and make sure that we can get everybody in safely, clean and desanitized and things like that between people. We do STD testing, virtually painless, right? We also do all sorts of wellness testing. We also do food sensitivity testing, allergy testing. So those are really popular tests that we do as well. We also provide remote services as well as on-site services. So we do have several businesses that we come on site and do testing for them, whether it's drug and alcohol, whether it's even COVID testing, we do on-site as well for them. So anything pretty much that your physician would order, or anything that you may be thinking, I really haven't been to a doctor lately. I really want to check my levels, see, make sure everything's okay. I just want a wellness panel. We do put together those sorts of packages as well that you can pay out of pocket, no need for a physician's order, and you can come into our lab and have those tests performed and have your results provided to you too. And it really supports, again, this notion of being proactive about your healthcare. Our physicians in our communities are really awesome about, you know, going and doing an exam to determine, you know, what's going on with you, right? But as we all know, when you go to the doctor sits you down and then says to you, you know, what's going on? They ask you, you know, what's happening. And then you have to explain to them, oh, it's this ache or this pain or this whatever the case may be. And then they go through their process of determining and trying to target what your ailment may be. But if you were able to come into your physician with something in hand, data, and not just any data, but basically what your body is telling you is wrong at that specific moment, it just further helps the MD, the physician, be able to make decisions about your care.
When you say that you do DNA testing, what is that? Is that like a genetic panel screening to see if you carry certain things? Is it like paternity testing? Is it that 23andMe type stuff? What kind of DNA testing is that?
It's both. It's both. So we do both of those. Yep.
All right. Thank you.
No problem.
And you guys also do background testing, correct?
We do. We do also do background checks. That's a part of our employer resource. But even for individuals who may be interested for whatever reason or not, we do background checks as well, or background screenings.
Awesome. And so for a lot of the medical tests, especially like the antibody test, is that paid through insurance or is there a cost for that?
Yeah. So we are a private lab. So all of our tests are out of pocket, right? They are out of pocket costs, and we do that for a couple reasons. One is because it provides an opportunity for individuals who have really, really high deductibles. A lot of times it's much, much less expensive for them to just come in and pay for the test that they need out of pocket in terms of trying to meet that deductible on some of those high plans. Then there's also a really big, you know, portion of our population that don't have insurance at all, right? And so we are able to provide a resource for those individuals as well. The way that it's set up is that if we weren't doing that, then we can't offer, or there's stipulations around how we can offer testing to individuals who do have these high deductibles and individuals who do not have insurance at all. Now, what we've done though, is that we've developed partnerships here in Illinois with other laboratories that we like to call our sister labs and our partner labs that we've built really close relationships with in terms of testing our samples, but also in terms of being able to serve the community. And so what we've done specific to COVID is that we were able to develop this partnership so that we can accept insurance for individuals who have a physician's order for COVID testing, because we understood the need, how many people need to be tested. And the more resources we have out there in order to do that, the better. And so we're happy about that partnership, and we are able to accept insurance for that testing at this time.
Awesome. Awesome. Again, it's Southland Black Chamber of Commerce Industry, and we're here with chamber member and special guest Ebony Gist of ARCpoint Labs in Orland Park. ARCpoint Labs provides a number of services regarding testing, anything from background testing to DNA testing, and also COVID-19 testing and antibody testing. Ebony, we are very gracious to have you give us a wonderful presentation with a wealth of information regarding the COVID-19. I know it's been a real struggle over the last few months dealing with this, a lot of anxiety, a lot of fears. So it's great to have a professional really explain to us some of those things that are involved. I do recommend that you check out ARCpoint Labs if you need any of their testing services. And I know we got a few people on a call. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask Ebony anything that you like. You got a question, Mark?
Nope.
Okay, I saw you unmuted yourself.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so Ebony, when it comes to tests like the background test, do you usually have people who who are applying for a job and they need to get background testing done, or do employers themselves send those people to you?
Typically it's employers themselves who send them over, not really like a person that comes and get their own background check. It's typically the employer that would send over that request or have an interest in having a background check done on someone. But we also, very interesting enough, will get requests from attorneys as well that need to have background checks done on individuals. And we've also even had people like, in custody battles and, things like that, and certain litigations where the individual, the person who is either taking someone to court for something or interested in taking someone to court for something, would try to get certain things done. But no, it's employers, primarily.
Okay, so when it comes to background testing, do you have to have the permission of the person that you're running the background on?
Yes, you do.
Okay, so I can't just go get a background test on there?
No, sir, you cannot.
Go ahead. Do you, maybe I didn't hear it, but do you do drug screenings too for employers? You'll do the drug tests?
Yes, we do drug testing. We run a series of panels, just depending on what people are looking for. And we do a couple different things. We do hair, we do urine as well. So, and then we do provide those services in our lab as well as on site, which tends to be a little more convenient for some employers, especially people in transportation or manufacturing or construction. For us to come on site is a huge benefit for them. But we do both.
I'm curious about how, with marijuana being legalized in Illinois now, is a marijuana screening included on a regular drug panel? Are you guys allowed to test for it? Are employers allowed to discriminate and say you can't work here because you tested positive for marijuana? All that stuff.
Yeah, very good question. So it depends on the company policy.
Okay.
Everything comes down to the policy. So if the company has a policy that excludes people being under the influence, right, operating those vehicles, right, or performing their job, etc., then they can test for that. It is within their legal right, as long as that particular employee has consented or to that policy as a condition of employment. So it really is driven by the policy. If there's no policy in place, then that employer needs to be very careful about what they're testing and not testing, or what decisions they're making based on the results of that drug test if there's no policy in place. But that's why it's important to have a policy in place. And we also provide that service as well. We help companies put in place drug and alcohol and testing policies so that they are protected and they can protect themselves as well as their employees as well.
All right. Now I'm curious if you know anything about marijuana testing, as far as being able to test, I guess, if you've used within a certain period of time, because I know that from my knowledge, marijuana can stay in your system for like a month, right? Something like that. And so if somebody used 3 weeks ago one time at a party when they were off duty, and then they can still test positive, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're high at that time. Is there any headway being made in getting a test that can determine whether or not you've used recently? I know I heard like the police department talking about it before, but I think the COVID-19 took everything over and they never finished. I never followed up on it, I guess, or I never heard anything more about it.
So there are thresholds that are used to determine positive and negative, right, within certain detection windows. And so those two factors do come into play in terms of the drug test that is performed. So it really depends on the panel that they have, the detection window that they're looking for, and then there are thresholds that are predetermined that kind of highlight, use, and then use within a certain time frame. So.
And then people look for those different things depending on what they're looking for at the job.
They do. And when we sit down with the employer, we usually go through that to explain to them exactly what they're looking for. If marijuana is something that they're including in there, we go through that to say, okay, so here's the detection window for this. Here's the detection window for this. And here's what you would be testing for. And here's the different drugs that would be included in that panel. And so we really sit down with them to understand what their concerns and their needs are. But we do have some flexibility on being able to customize that if they do feel there's somebody that is, a frequent user, or somebody versus, somebody who may have used in the past a long time ago.
Right. So like if a trucker were to get into an accident and a part of their regular, whatever their job requires them to do is to come in and get a drug test done to make sure that they weren't under the influence at the time of the accidents, your test would be able to determine if the employer chose to go that route would be to see if they had used very recently or if they used 3 weeks ago when they weren't driving.
So if it's a trucker, DOT has specific regulations that have to be followed in terms of what needs to be tested, right? So that's different. That DOT is regulated, right? Non-DOT, that's a little different because it doesn't have such regulated such stipulations. But for DOT, there are specific regulations that we must test for. So there's no flexibility, and really the employer has no flexibility there either. It's regulated by the government. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
No problem.
Awesome. Well, we're coming up on our hour here. Ebony, we're looking forward to hosting a ribbon cutting for you here soon.
Very cool.
And yep. And we definitely appreciate the wealth of information that you gave us today. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
So no, I really wanted to thank you very much for doing this, because again, I think it is a really good opportunity to be able to talk about this in smaller settings. I just want to reiterate, just because of the current state that we're in, that if you have a facility near you, whether you are symptomatic or asymptomatic, if you feel like you have been around, exposed, right, to someone who you know to be positive, or you were in a setting where you were in a mass group of people, it is important to be tested. And I want us to be aware and be informed that we don't have to be afraid to be tested. We don't have to be afraid to be fearful of the fact that your information is going to be used a certain way and things like that. You do have people who you can trust, can rely on, people who have your best interests at heart that are in these positions, whether it's from the clinic to the clinicians to the doctors. We have representation at these levels of healthcare that are raising their hands and are sounding the boards for when there are injustices observed or when there are issues. So we need to take a proactive approach to ensuring that the healthcare system works for us. And part of that is being present. So if you feel that you have come in contact with someone that has been positive, if there are centers close by you, please look for one and please get tested. Not for yourself, for your grandmother, your neighbor's grandmother, your aunt, etc. That's it.
I'm sorry. Awesome. Okay. What we like to do now is go around and do some outroductions. I did coin that term. So I will start. My name is Cornell Darden Jr. I'm the president and CEO of the Southland Black Chamber of Commerce. And I am thankful for Ebony for providing us with a wealth of information. We go next to Erica.
Hello, I am Erica with the Southland Black Chamber of Commerce. I am the vice president. Yes, thank you so much, Ebony. That was a wonderful presentation. You did answer a lot of questions. I'm sure that all the people who are watching and all the people who will watch, because we are putting this on Facebook, will see, we'll learn a lot about what you guys do, and I think it's amazing what you guys are doing. Keep it up. Thank you so much.
Okay, next we can go to Mark Santana.
Hello, this is Mark Santana. I'm the host of the podcast show, the Tall Man Conservative Show, and I want to say thank you to Ms. Ebony for coming on and for your insight and for the information you shared.
Hey, Mark, maybe you should invite Ebony to your show.
Yes, I will.
I'll link you up with her contact info.
All right, I will.
Next, we have Hasina.
Hello again, I'm Hasina. I am owner of Faith, Hope, and Spirit. I am a speaker, trainer, and coach by trade of John Maxwell Certified, and I am the vice president of the Homewood Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you, Hasina.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, Hasina.
Thank you, Amina. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Next, we have Kiara.
Hi, I'm Kiara. I'm a membership coordinator with the Southland Black Chamber of Commerce, and I'm also the owner of Sweet Keys Creations. Thank you for all of your information. I was a little bit late, so I did have one more question if you have a little time.
It's okay.
Go ahead, Kiara.
Because I was wondering about, as far as the testing, you know, everyone has to have the swab through their nose. Is there any other form of testing to take? Because it freaks me out.
I told I was scared too.
Yeah, so Kiara, don't worry. You do not have to be afraid. We do have another method of testing. So we do an oral swab. In fact, that's the only collection method that we use at our facility. We can do the nasal swab, but we do the oral because it's a lot less invasive, we find, and people tend to respond to it a lot better, especially the kids. And so we do the oral swab. So you can come on down and get tested if you like to, and we do the oral swab.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Okay, next we have Dexter Harris.
Hello, everyone. Once again, I want to thank Ebony. I know it's been said already, but I do want to echo that. This was very informative, and it really helped me to be more motivated to be tested. But anyway, I am the CEO and founder of DK Extreme Flooring, and also pastor at Bethel Church in Gary, Indiana.
Thank you, Dexter.
Thank you for joining us, Dexter. And next we have Kathleena Darden. Are you there, Kathy?
I believe she doesn't know how to unmute.
Okay. All right. Well, we definitely appreciate everyone for joining the call and all of our Facebook viewers. If there's any more comments left on Facebook, Ebony, we will get those over to you.
No problem.
Again, we appreciate the wealth of information. It was extremely helpful. I believe Senator Joyce has logged off, but I'll definitely put him in touch with you. I think he had a few more questions too, but he had to leave early.
Sounds good.
But again, with the Southland Black Chamber of Commerce and Industry, be on the lookout for communication from us. If you guys are not members, definitely leave your email address and we will add you to our email list so that you can be apprised of future events. And we will close out with you, Ebony.
Sounds good. So thank you guys so much for everything. I'm Ebony Gist with ARCpoint Labs in Orland Park. We do all sorts of wellness testing. I am the owner along with my husband, Stefan Gist, and I am thankful, very, very thankful for the Southland Black Chamber of Commerce. You guys enjoy your weekend.
Awesome. Enjoy, everyone. Get that barbecue.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.